continue dumping wastewater into lagoons near the Pictou Landing First Nation. Owners of the Northern Pulp mill near Pictou, Nova Scotia, say that will lead to the facility's closure and the elimination of 300 jobs at the mill and an estimated 2,400 more in the forestry sector. Premier Mcneil sat down with CTV's Steve Murphy this afternoon for his annual year-end interview. As part of that interview, the Northern Pulp decision was discussed.
Premier Mcneil, good of you to come. Thanks for having me. We're playing this on New Year's Eve, but of course, to be completely transparent, we're recording it just a couple of hours after your announced decision on the enforcement of the Boat Harbour Act. You said it was one of the most difficult decisions you've ever made in government, and I must say you appeared to be shaken as you made it. Your voice was quivering as you made that announcement.
I know the decision I made today, or made leading into this, was impacting lives and families that will be immediate. I don't take great pride in that. It was a stressful journey to get to the point, but I believe the decision we made today is in our collective best interest in our future. This mill had 5 years to meet the environmental goals of our province at 3 different occasions. We're no closer to that than we were when we introduced the act. So it is time now. How do we support those workers and those families is why we announced the $50 million fund and now transition to a different forestry sector, because forestry still is important to the future of our province.
I want to get to that in a moment, but I do want to point out that if the mill had 5 years to come up with a solution, you, with great respect as Premier, had 5 years to come up with an alternative.
So we have been, if you go back and look, we've been looking at the alternatives, but the reality is all of our sawmills currently we're going into Northern Pulp, being paid well for their chips, unwilling to look for other markets, because down the road they had this opportunity. The problem with it, the opportunity wasn't meeting the environmental standards. We're at this point today, so we've looked at other options where some of those chips will go, and now we need to look at external markets to export that product, because quite frankly, we have an industry that is viable, one that will be sustainable in the long run, but it will transition.
When you enacted this law, you must have known that this was a possible outcome.
We believe that, quite frankly, I believe the industry can coexist. It does everywhere. The problem is you need a proponent who wants to actually meet the environmental standards of today. If you had asked me 5 years ago, would we be at this point today? No different. No, I would have never suggested that. I would have never believed that. We would have been, if not there, a lot closer.
Well, what are you implying then about Northern Pulp's motive? Did they want to close this mill?
I'm not implying that's a question for them. What I'm telling you, to meet the environmental standards of today, I believe that we would have been a lot closer than we are today, because as a matter of fact, we're no further ahead than we were 5 years ago.
What is the duty of government as it protects the environment to protect jobs? And again, we're talking about hundreds of jobs, direct jobs, possibly thousands in spin-offs. What is your duty to protect those jobs?
There's always the balance. One, in my view, doesn't trump the other. They can coexist, though. This is not 1960. What might have been okay in a practice in 1960 is not acceptable in 2020. We provided them a 5-year path to be able to do this. And we believe that the economic future and the environmental future of this province are connected. And we will continue to work with the forestry sector to transition. And it's my hope, quite frankly, that the company sees a future for itself here and works on a path.
I mean, they've made it clear they don't see it.
Well, that's a decision for them, but there is a path for them if they choose to take it.
You know, of course, you've alluded to this. In fact, you stated it in your news conference that thousands are facing an uncertain future at a terrible time. You are promising money and assistance to help with the transition. The question I guess they're asking is a transition to what? You know, if you're working in this sector, if you're a truck driver, if you're working in the sector, to what can you transition?
So the biggest issue right now in front is the chips and sawmills, which typically would end up Northern. Some of them were going for biomass, which was of less value.
Right.
Where the work and transition we need to continue to do, and part of this money would be looking to make sure that we build export markets for that product, which in turn, once we move that out of the mill yards, we can then continue to move this market, our product, into the global market. All of this is interconnected. We have private woodlot owners out there that will be impacted by this.
Right.
But the key is, in order to keep this industry viable, we need to look for alternatives for the chips, which, quite frankly, were an important economic stream for our mills in Nova Scotia.
You announced this on December 20th, but I want to ask you bluntly, when did you know for certain, without any doubt, that this is what you were going to have to do?
I've thought about that leading into the 20th. The minister made his decision on the 17th, the regulator, about that. So when we were no closer today than we were in 2015, it wasn't that we were asking for a 6-month extension.
But you were no closer a year ago either. You were no closer 2 years ago.
No, we thought there would be, on the 17th, there may potentially be a path where they would get an environmental assessment approved. But when we're no closer today, it's not like we're asking for 6 months. And we need people to understand that the economic future and the environmental future of our province are tied together. And again, I believe these industries should coexist. It's unfortunate we were at that point. But in this, let's look at the opportunities. We've committed to workers. Same as I made a promise around Boat Harbor. I'm committing to the workers in this industry that your government will not abandon you.
Did you ever, at any point in this process, consider making the other decision to extending the deadline?
We looked at all sides of this issue. We looked at because there's people's lives we're talking about.
Yeah.
But we were no closer. It became very clear to me that we needed a transition here. And how were we going to make that transition? And that's why the fund is available, and why we want to work with all members of the sector to fully ensure that the forestry sector is a future of this province.
Finally, on this subject, there is a school of thought that says the province, the government, the taxpayers might be legally liable for paying the fines of this company should the company decide to defy the law. Have you considered the possibility that that could happen?
No, they will not be defying the law. We have capacity to ensure that we enforce the law. And Boat Harbor.
What is the capacity?
Well, the IA, which would run out on the 30th, will not be able to be reissued because there is no place to dump the effluent.
Not to get too deep into the weeds here, but there are those who believe that the indemnity deals that the province has with the company might leave the government on the hook for all of the company's expenses.
Those are two very different things. You potentially have an issue that they will, I'm sure, have future discussions about. But when it comes to following the law, we expect them to respect the Boat Harbor Act.
And you will do what is necessary to do so.
Yes.
I want to get on to some other.
That was CTV's Steve.